communication 583 at this time. Mr. Clerk.
Communication 583, request discussion with the Fire Chief, the Director of Human Resources, and the Director of Finance regarding changing the Battalion Chief's pay grade from EM3 to EM5 from Councilmember Aaron S.Y. Chung, dated October 25, 2017.
Thank you, Mr. Chung. Please motion to file communication.
So moved.
Thank you. Go. It's been moved by Mr. Chung, seconded by Mr. Kanuha. Mr. Chung.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I asked for a half an hour on this matter, but it really shouldn't take more than 12 minutes, I think. This is the situation. I don't know if any of you recall, but during the course of the departmental reviews, I did ask Chief Rosario what he felt about this particular issue, which I'll describe in a little while. And he said that he was actually in favor of it, and I'm going to use the word reallocating, but I don't really know what the term of art is, moving the assistant chief salary, the battalion chief salary pay from what it is right now to a little higher grade. Now, just as a matter of background, I think all of you know we have the ranking of the fire department. You have the fire chief, you have the deputy chief, you have 2 assistant chiefs and 10 battalion chiefs. 10, or maybe depending on how you look at it, might be even 11. I'm not too sure. But those battalion chiefs are paid at EM3 level. The assistant chiefs, EM5. Back in 2005, or maybe about 10, 12 years ago, they had 6 assistant chiefs. I know it's kind of hard to follow, but they had 6 assistant chiefs, and they had some kind of reorganization in the department, which made them all reallocated into battalion chief positions. We had now remaining 2 assistant chiefs, then you had actually downgraded from assistant chiefs to battalion chiefs. But they got the same job description basically, and these battalion chiefs are overseeing companies of over 55 employees at a crack. And I think, well, each district, depending on which district you have, you might even either have 9 or 11 companies that these guys are overseeing. Whereas captains only oversee anywhere from 4 to 5 people per company. What has happened in the department, and I'm hearing this from fire department personnel, it's not something that I came up with, right? They're telling me that there's a problem in the department which is compromising promotion and safety. And these are people, not just those who are affected by this, but it's fire captains who don't see any motivation for trying to move towards a battalion chief promotion, people under the captain rank, and also retired people. And actually, battalion chiefs themselves are saying something's wrong with this system. So what I wanted to do is, if I could call up Bill Brilhante, who's our HR director, and he's actually a former firefighter himself, so he knows this thing really well. If he could just come and explain very objectively what the situation is in that department as it relates to the battalion chief salary and captain salary. Bill, are you there?
Good afternoon. William Brahanti, Acting Director, Department of Human Resources. Yes, I'm here in Hilo.
Is Bill there?
Hello?
Mr. Brilhante, is your mic on? We can't hear Hilo for some reason.
His mic is on if you can hear me.
Okay, we can hear you.
Is this one better?
There you go. Thank you, Mr. Brilhante. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. William Brahanti, Acting Director, Department of Human Resources. In response to Mr. Chun's Councilmember Chun's question, requesting a brief history to explain the differences between a captain and a battalion chief, it primarily comes down to one distinction, and that is as it relates to collective bargaining. A captain's position, FEO, a rescue man, or a firefighter, they're incorporated in the collective bargaining system, HFFA, and so they come under whatever the collective bargaining agreement relates to. Whereas a battalion chief and assistant chief, They're classified as what is known as EMs, or excluded management. And excluded management primarily deals with, those are your mid-level managers or your division supervisors. So that's what we have for the battalion chiefs and the assistant chiefs, whereas the third highest prong, or the third highest level of administration within a department, is your deputy department head or department head, and those, are appointed administrative positions. So, that's the discrepancy. As far as, the salaries for a captain, currently a captain in the fire department is classified as a SR-25, and that's the scale we use, moving forward. We have to have some type, I'm just going to interrupt. This is just so, it's unnerving to be talking to empty chairs here in Hilo, and the actual video feed is to my side. So just, if I seem uncomfortable, I truly am. But anyway. So moving forward,
We apologize.
there has to be some basis when we're setting salaries for our executive management personnel, and what we do is we incorporate the structure that is established through the bargaining unit, or the SR scale. So a captain is classified as a SR-25, and what happens is, as you go down a step, there's a 4% difference between a SR-24 and a SR-25, and as you go up a step, there's a 4% difference, a higher increase in pay between a SR-25 and a SR-26. And so what the county has historically done, as well as the other jurisdictions, is they use that SR scale moving forward. So in this particular situation, a battalion chief is classified as a EM3, which is similar or comparable to a SR-26. So from a captain, SR-25, to a battalion chief, SR-26, there's a 4% difference. And moving up the ladder, you look at a assistant chief, which is a EM5, which would be equivalent to an SR-28. So it's a two-step, increase from the battalion chiefs, who are, at 26. And I'm sure I explained that, and now you guys understand it clear as mud moving forward. But I'd be happy to answer any questions to hopefully clarify the situation.
Is it possible for a fire captain to make more than a battalion chief?
That's somewhat a loaded question, and the reason is because when we compare a captain and compare a battalion chief, we're looking at, there's captains who have different steps. So a fire captain who's been in the position for maybe 3 or 4 years may be at a lower longevity step than a fire captain who's been in the position for 18, 19 years. So if we're looking at just the base pay of the captain's position, in comparison to the base pay of a battalion chief's position, the captain's position starts off at a lower salary rate, and the battalion chief's position would be a 4% higher starting rate. But, getting back to your question, there's some variances as to, what captains make based on their seniority and longevity. So the answer to that question can be yes in some instances, and if you look at just the base starting pay, the answer to that question would be no.
Yeah, well, would you say this, that does the current system provide an incentive or a disincentive for fire captains or others to aspire to the position of a battalion chief?
Councilmember Chun, the only thing I can really make a comparison of and kind of base my opinion on in response to your question is we look at the recruitment, and we look at how competitive and how, I guess the term I'm looking for is how interested the potential candidates were in the recruitment. So when we look at that, as we recently had a recruitment maybe about 2 months ago, and for the battalion chief, we had 2 vacant battalion chiefs positions that we were recruiting for, and we only were able to qualify 2 candidates. There were only interest from 2 candidates, captains for that position. So, when I reflect upon that, that taking place, then I think my response to your question would be probably there is some disinterest by the captains to seek the promotion of a battalion chief, at this time.
I'm trying to be really careful in asking you these questions because I certainly understand your situation. You have to be totally objective when you assess this arrangement, because I understand back in 2014, when the administration was against, I don't know what the term of art is, but reallocating or reclassifying that position, there was some kind of study done. I think, all of these HR positions are supposed to be assessed on basis of fairness, I would think. And I just don't look at it as being very fair when, you have just a small increase in the salary, which from all accounts, when I talk to fire personnel, these fire captains are saying they got to get their heads examined if they're going to apply for the battalion chief. And you don't have to, comment on that, but I know you're kind of synthesizing all of this and probably agreeing with what I'm saying. But just given the amount of responsibilities that a battalion chief has vis-a-vis a fire captain, I just wanted to know this, and this is my last question. Are you guys looking at having these salaries increased for the battalion chiefs, which would also necessitate a corresponding increase to the assistant chiefs' salaries, I would assume? But are you guys looking at this?
Recently there was a meeting that, I attended. It was at that meeting was the fire chief, myself, and the mayor. And, there was some discussion specifically related to this issue. And, there was a decision made that we would go forward and conduct additional investigation, to kind of ascertain exactly what was going on. I believe information was elicited from our finance director as well, Ms. Sako. And, I think at this time, it's my understanding that the administration, the fire department, and, along with the finance department, is supportive of the premise that we're going to further investigate this situation. And the basis, that I think everybody agreed to, the rationale and the justification for moving forward was, the point you brought on, specifically is that, we want to ensure that there's fairness and equality with the level of work and the expectations and the responsibilities for each of the positions within the County of Hawaii. But that being the case, there has to be some quantifiable evidence to support why we're going to increase, an employee's pay, and that's the process moving forward. My understanding is that the fire chief is in the process of preparing a repricing request that will be submitted to HR. Upon receipt by HR of that repricing request, we will then conduct another, we'll requisition another study by our classification and pay division, and to make a determination as to what the most appropriate pricing, price level salary should be for those positions. And they're gonna investigate, all the responsibilities, all the areas that these battalion chiefs are responsible for. But what we also do is we also will take a look at other jurisdictions, comparative pay for like County of Maui, City and County of Honolulu, and the like, and we'll make a determination. You referenced the 2014 study. I had a chance of, although I wasn't, in HR at the time, I didn't play any role in that. I did have an opportunity to, review a confidential report, which we always hold confidential in our department. And, there were some concerns. There were some areas that I thought maybe wasn't sufficiently addressed that, maybe could be better addressed moving forward. But, at the end of the day, we want to make sure that there is sufficient evidence to support a determination that is specific to determining an employee's pay and what type of compensation level they should be at. And again, the premise is to ensure equality and fairness for everybody, not just one specific, employment sector, but everybody within the county, to ensure that, that fairness is across the board.
No, and I appreciate that. So you guys are actually looking into this issue. There is some movement in that regard. I know you can't guarantee anything, but at least you guys are looking into it, right?
That's correct. I believe there's a concerted effort from the administration moving forward to take a second look and to kind of give, additional put additional eyes on this issue, and just fully consider all the issues that are raised both by the fire department administration, by the current battalion chiefs, by future captains, who may aspire to those positions moving forward. So, and of course, there's always the rationale behind, the back of everybody's mind that we have to ensure financial stability moving forward. So, that's always a consideration as well.
Right. And, there is a larger picture here, especially when we're dealing with public safety departments. I don't know exactly how much the chief of police is making or the fire chief, but I would suspect that there are persons within the department who are making more than those respective chiefs. And, it could be because of overtime. I've always felt that all of our department heads should be entitled to overtime, with some reasonable checks and balances. But, having said that, I really appreciate your time and everyone's, indulgence here. I did say it was going to be short, but I forgot that Bill was on the other side over there. He has a tendency of talking a little longer. But anyway, thank you, Bill. I really appreciate the information.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Mahalo, Mr. Chung. And Ms. Liloy, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Brohanti, we are looking at empty chairs also here, so we are a little nervous ourselves. I do have a question, or maybe if you could slowly explain the process or the understanding of the positions. And what we're looking at is the EM3 position and its relationship to an SR position, compounded by a bargaining unit situation with the firefighters contract, and then EM5 position, which is an relevant EO position, which is excluded management, and I believe covered by a different bargaining unit. Could you slowly walk us through that piece?
Okay. Thank you, Councilwoman Liloy. Again, William Berhunty. I think, this was a concept that took me a while to grasp, as well as when I moved into the HR arena. But when we look at management positions, our EMs are not covered by, well, to a certain extent, they're not directly covered by a bargaining unit. Whereas with the fire department, HFFA, they cover all the lower level rank and file firefighters, from a firefighter to a fire rescue specialist to a fire equipment operator, and then to the level of a captain. Those positions come under, and you have your fire inspectors as well. Those positions come under the classification or the auspice of the collective bargaining agreement. They're union members specifically. Now, when we move up the ladder to the battalion chiefs and the assistant chiefs, those positions are, as I alluded to earlier, they're classified as excluded management. So they're management positions. And I think there's justification and rationale to keep the two separate, because what you want to do is you don't want to have a situation where, when you're represented by a bargaining unit, there's some disadvantage to having your managers represented by the same personnel or same entity that's representing the subordinates. So I think just to keep that process clean, they created this excluded management, classification of employees. That being the case, the state, as well as all the other jurisdictions, have, we cumulatively compile salaries. And, as you know, for fire department, an SR-25 in Hilo makes the same as a SR-25 in City and County of Honolulu, and conversely as a SR-25 captain in County of Maui as well. So there's a salary structure that is applicable to each of the positions statewide. And so as they were addressing the EM salary structure, the excluded management structure, they wanted to kind of create a similar type situation. So what they did was they needed a basis in order to establish the EM salary at. So collectively, all the jurisdictions created a salary structure for the EMs that would be, based on the collective bargaining salary structure, the SR structure, and they would assign them to the comparative level for the EMs. So say like a EM3 is compared or is a comparative level currently as a SR26. EM5 is in comparison to a SR28. So that was the basis and the rationale behind the salary structure for the EMs. I hope that answered the question.
It helps me. Everybody's got to pick a lane in all of this, and it seems like some of it is we're using an apple cart to address oranges, and so I can understand, some of the confusion in the salaries, and like Mr. Chung alluded to, that if you've put in a lot of time and experience at a specific SR level, after your step in grade, you might be at step JKL and then have to move into an SR, 26 level, but start at step A. And that's actually less than where you left because you were at a different grade. I wanted to circle back on a question Mr. Chung asked about advertising for the 2 BC positions. Could you share that story again? You mentioned they opened it up for recruitment, but it wasn't filled.
Actually, the 2 BC positions were recruited, and there were only 2 applicants who submitted, their application for consideration for the position. My understanding, and Chief Rosario, who's present today, could probably provide a better accurate answer, but my understanding was that only one of the applicants met accepted the position. So currently there's a vacant battalion chief position right now. And and that's kind of the concern that we had, when we had that meeting with the administration, is that I think as we move forward, the county as a whole always wants to ensure that the best and brightest. I know that term is overused, but it's such an important concept moving forward, is that we want the best and brightest individuals to be promoted, because as we get older and as our families mature, we want to ensure that the stability of the county is there, and that's based on having the best and brightest individuals running the various departments. And I'm just going to go back to an opinion that I hold right now is I think what's somewhat problematic, and maybe something that a specific area that we definitely have to take a closer look at, is the fact that a fire captain is classified as a SR-25 and a battalion chief is classified as a SR-26. Now, that's only a 4% difference. When you look at the structure of the fire department, you look at the classification of a firefighter, the base 1 firefighter, coming on the line 1 year after passing recruitment, I believe he's a SR-17. And then that firefighter could possibly get promoted to a fire rescue specialist, who's a SR-19. And that firefighter or fire rescue specialist could get promoted to a fire equipment operator, who's a SR-21. And then that fire equipment operator could get a promotion to that of a captain, which is a SR-25. So as you can see, there's significant steps in between, all along the process as a firefighter progresses to a fire rescue specialist, a fire equipment operator, and a captain. Unfortunately, from captain to battalion chief, we don't have that same separation. I think what we have is what I've identified as a compression at that level. When we go from a SR-25, a captain at SR-25, to a battalion chief who's a EM3, who's classified as a SR-26. So I think, that's kind of the pinch point in the process, the advancement process.
Thank you, Mr. Brillante. I agree. I've said this before, county jobs are coveted jobs, but I also want to become an employer of choice where people choose to come and offer that skill set of being the best and brightest. I'm going to yield at this time. I actually have some other questions, but I'm cautious because it might roll over into some personnel issues, and I don't want to go into an executive session. So I'm going to yield at this time. Thank you.
Mahalo, Ms. Liloy. Any other council members? Mr. Chung.
Yeah. And Bill, thank you very much for that last statement that you made, because it really hit home. Some of my colleagues might be wondering, well, why the heck did Aaron pick this, subject to, ask for a presentation on? But really, it's emblematic of a more fundamental problem, I think, in my opinion. And I touched upon it earlier. With the public safety departments, police and fire in particular, most of the time, I can only think of a few examples, maybe when Vic Vieira came from Honolulu to be the police chief. Normally, people go up the rank, and we'd like to see that, quite frankly. It's good to have outside eyes from time to time, but we want our people aspiring to that highest job. And, unless we can get them a salary that's commensurate with the responsibilities, it's going to be hard for us to have people applying for those jobs and getting the competition at that level. So, I just wanted to say that this little presentation today, or this job that we're looking at, the battalion chiefs, is actually part of a bigger issue. But thank you very much for your time, Bill. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you very
Mr.
much.
Chung. Thank you, Mr. Chung. Any other council members? Ms. O'Hara and Hilo, do you have any questions? I can't see you right now.
No, I don't. Thank you, though.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Mr. Brillante, thank you very much for being here this morning. And on that note, all those in favor of filing communication 583, please say aye. Any opposed? We have 9 ayes. Thank you. Mr. Clerk, I think we can go to our last item on the agenda, which is Resolution 393-17.